It's super nice to be here. I'm really honored. I really have, I'm super excited to share my story with you. I'm going to use a presentation if that's okay with everyone. So I'm going to share my screen. If anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And at the end, I will happily answer. So don't worry, I will check that as soon as I'm finished presenting. So here we go. Can everyone see my screen? Are we set? Yeah? Okay, great. So my presentation is called Why I Dedicated My Life to the New Food Revolution. So as the two MCs said, I'm Sonalie Figueiras. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of Green Queen Media. So we are Asia's largest sustainability and impact media. What's an impact media? An impact media is a media company that uses content, whether it's through the written word or videos or graphics or social media, to basically inspire our readers to make changes in their lives, whether it's in their office or in their homes or for themselves. I created the term impact media to distinguish us from regular media, which is just sharing news. We really have a mission to change behavior and change minds. And the way we do that is that we inform, we inspire, and we empower. So we inform by sharing news and stories of things you need to know about the most urgent issues of our time. And then we inspire you by featuring really, really incredible human beings. For example, an incredible human being is the founder of Kids4Kids. That would be an example of someone we would want to obviously highlight. And through it, featuring really inspiring and innovating, pioneering humans that are trying to change the world in so many different ways, we then hope that you feel empowered to make change yourself. And then that's when we come in with resources and guides and information on how you can do that. So as you can see, it's a threefold mission. But before I became Green Queen and created Green Queen Media, I want to tell you a little bit about my journey and how I got here, because this was not my plan. It kind of happened by accident because of actually health issues. So going to the next slide. So first of all, I want to start with one of my favorite quotes in the world, and I hope this is a quote that resonates with all of you listening. Maybe you feel you're just one person. Maybe you feel that one person cannot do enough. Maybe you feel that your work may not matter, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Never, ever forget that a few caring people can change the world. In fact, that's how it's always worked. One person woke up, decided that things needed to change, and then they got other people excited, and then eventually there was a movement, and then they changed the world. And this is with women's rights, civil rights, abolishing slavery. Look at the most kind of inspiring young person, I think, right now in the world, Greta Thunberg, who has just gone back to school after spending a year striking all around the world. And that was after spending another year where she just sat in front of the parliament in her native country of Sweden. And I mean, no one even cared about what she was doing for months, but she sat there, and then one day someone else noticed, and then another someone, and then a reporter noticed, and then they told her story. And then before you know it, she started a global movement. She was on major stages. Government officials were listening to her. Celebrities were listening to her. Major business CEOs were listening to her. And nobody could ignore her. And she was just one girl, a young girl, not even 18. And that could be you. All of you listening to me today are Greta's, just waiting to find your cause and change the world. I really believe that. So Green Queen today looks very different, but this is what Green Queen started out looking like in 2011. And why did I start Green Queen? I had no plan to start a media company at all. I do not have a background in media. I honestly did not even use Facebook when I started Green Queen. In fact, Green Queen's Facebook page, I didn't even create it until 2013. Can you believe it? So for 2 years, I just had a blog and I didn't have Facebook, I didn't have Instagram, I didn't have anything because I didn't know anything about media. This is me when I was a teenager, basically you guys' age. This is a photo of me in India at a friend's house. I am giving you a big smile, but actually I was really, really miserable because I was really, really sick all the time. I had all these health issues, and every time we went to the doctor, which sorry to say was always an older white man or an older Chinese man, because I lived here in Hong Kong, and they just ignored me. They just said that I had, you know, IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome, and they just dismissed me, and they didn't try and help me in any way. They didn't ask me about my diet. They didn't say anything, and I had all these really bad stomach aches and headaches, and sometimes I had to leave school because my headaches were so bad, and that was really difficult for me because I loved school, and I just felt like no one could hear me, no one cared about my problems, and my parents, you know, they just trusted the doctors and they just believed them, and I just felt that I knew that they weren't listening to me and the doctors were ignoring me. And so basically I started to do all my own research. I used, luckily we have Google, Google existed, and so I just started to go on Google and do tons of research, and I put in my symptoms, and I realized that I probably had some major hormonal disorders. And so I did tons of research, and I realized, oh, if I change the way I eat, I might feel better. So I started researching how to change my diet and how to eat more clean. So basically adding more organic food and trying to avoid foods with pesticides or with hormones, like chicken or eggs or milk. And also maybe not to drink too much milk because it was so full of hormones, it might be affecting me. And eventually, I won't go into too much detail, but eventually after 10 years of going to doctors in 4 countries and really fighting to find out what was wrong with me, I realized that I had 2 chronic diseases. One is endometriosis and one is Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So it doesn't matter about those. I won't go into detail about what those are because we don't have so much time, but basically they are both hormonal diseases that usually that we don't know why people get them. There are no cures, and there's very little money put into the research for these diseases because they don't have a cure. So pharmaceutical companies can't make money from selling me drugs. And 2, also because most people that are affected by these 2 diseases are women, and women's health tends not to get as much money or attention. So I just realized that even though I finally had a diagnosis, I had to manage my health by myself. And that meant changing my habits, changing my lifestyle, and changing my diet. And it meant, as I said, switching to a diet with low pesticides, no hormones, no antibiotics, stopping taking anything that had, you know, too many preservatives. And then eventually I started doing research and realizing it wasn't just my food, it was the products I was using at home for my lotion or my shampoo or my soap. And then, you know, the products we were using in my house to clean the house, they had really strong chemical ingredients that were toxic to me and that were increasing the toxic load in my body. And I was getting symptoms. And so I started making all these changes, and then I felt much better. But then the thing is, at first it was just about my health and it was just personal. But then the more research I did, the more I realized, oh my goodness. So we're growing food using conventional agriculture, and we're putting all these pesticides, insecticides, fungicides, and then suddenly the soil is dying, and we're growing food in soil that doesn't have any nutrients. So the food we're eating has no nutrients. And then we're growing animals in these industrial conditions, and so they get sick because they're not in their natural habitat. And then we inject them with antibiotics, and then we also put hormones in them to make them bigger. And that's also causing damage to our environment because, you know, we have so many farm animals, and then they're releasing greenhouse gases through methane. And then I realized that all the products that we were using in our homes are releasing toxic ingredients into our waterways, so in our sinks and in our toilets, which then goes into our rivers, which then goes into our lakes, which then goes into the ocean. And then I realized that we had a huge ocean pollution problem, and there was plastic everywhere. And then I realized it was also about our clothes, you know, which are made of plastic and then releasing microplastic in when we wash them. And it just snowballed into all these things. And I was so shocked that my whole life, as someone who was, you know, I thought well educated and, you know, went to school and was a good student, no one had ever talked to me about any of this. And I really hope, I'm much older than you guys. I'm 38, so probably over 20 years older than all of you. So I really hope that today in schools, it's completely different, and probably you are learning about these things. But in my generation and at my time, I learned none of this, none of this. And I couldn't believe it. I started asking my parents, like, what's going on? Why did you not tell me this? My parents said I was, you know, thought I was crazy, and they thought I was just being extreme, and they said, no, 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 you know, this isn't such a big deal. And I said, no, it is a huge deal. All of these toxic ingredients have caused me to get sick. And if I'm sick, imagine how many other people are sick. And we're ruining our water and our oceans and our soil. And why aren't we talking about this all the time? So at the same time, I was trying to live this healthier life, greener life in Hong Kong. And I was finding these really interesting people like David Young from Green Monday and Chef Peggy Chan from Grassroots Pantry and many others that were, you know, working to fix some of these issues. But I wasn't reading about them in the mainstream media, and not enough people knew about them, if at all. And so I thought, well, why don't I start a little blog where I can list all the resources that I found? I called it my little green book of addresses. And that's how Green Queen started. And this is basically one of the first screenshots. You can see only 5 subscribers to my newsletter. It was one of the first screenshots that I took of the website. And this is what it looked like, and this is what I was doing. As you can see, it was very basic. I didn't really know what I was doing. I'd never used WordPress before. I'd never really ran a website. As I told you, I didn't even have social media. I wasn't even sending emails. But I thought, okay, well, you know, I'll get this out there, and if people need it, great. And then, of course, you know, it grew into Green Queen Media today, which is really, I think, has become the largest sustainability media in Asia in English. And we're really, really proud. We reach millions of readers every year. We've helped, I don't know, hundreds or thousands of people start businesses, get their message out, start charities, change their lives, become plant-based, you know, volunteer, become zero waste. And so really the impact of that I always wanted to have has really happened and is happening every day. I mean, we are still very small compared to, you know, all the other big, we're not the BBC or anything, but I think that you have to start somewhere and you have to keep going. And it's especially really good because in the last 2 years, the world has really changed, and everyone is talking about plastic waste and the problem with our broken food system, and you know, the importance of being minimalist. And so all of the messages that we've been sharing for almost 10 years have really come into, they've become meaningful, and more people want this information. So we really can have even more of an impact, and we can get more readers. And now we have readers in the US, in the UK, all across Asia. You know, at first we were really just a Hong Kong blog, and then we became a media, and now we're really starting to have a global voice, although Asia is really our focus. We are also the only plant-based and slaughter-free media in Hong Kong, which means that we do not cover meat, dairy, or seafood unless it is cell-based or fermented or plant-based. So we really believe in a world where you do not need to kill animals to be nourished. Now, that's the story of Green Queen, but what I really want to tell you is that Green Queen is a way for me to share my life's work, which is my passion for changing the food system. Sorry, I'm being silly with my, okay. So this part is the more informative part, so I hope you'll stick with me. Basically, 11,000 scientists agree that we are reaching an irreversible point in our fight towards solving climate change. In fact, since I created this slide, actually we may have already passed the inflection point. The world is getting warmer. We will have to suffer from the consequences of 1 or 2 degree warming globally, but the idea is to remind everyone that even though we've already passed some serious negative points of irreversible damage, we still need to do everything we can to reverse the negative consequences. If we were live right now, I would ask all of you to tell me the answer to this question, but I know we don't have forever, so I do want to go a little faster. But whenever I do this live, I say to people, what's the #1 way to reduce your carbon footprint? I usually get answers like quit plastic bags, or you know, travel less, or you know, use public transport, or something like that. But actually, the answer, which may shock many people, is that the #1 way to reduce your personal carbon footprint is to reduce meat and dairy consumption. It says reduce, it doesn't say give up. We eat way too much meat, okay? And by 2050, the demand for meat means that our agricultural emissions will increase by 80%. Now, as many of you may already know, climate change is direct, and the negative consequences of climate change are directly related to us producing too many greenhouse gas emissions, which are a group of different gas emissions by different industries, but also caused by things like cows farting, which releases methane. And all of these gases then, basically they cause heating in our atmosphere, and that heating then causes irreversible damage. It does things like, we'll go into more detail, but it does things like obviously cause us to have more floods, more typhoons, more heat. Everywhere it's getting hotter. I don't know, I'm sure all of you have been stuck in Hong Kong because of COVID. July was the hottest month on record in Hong Kong since 1868. The hottest month. So we will have more of those hot months, which means we're going to need more resources to use things like air conditioning. And it also means that more people are going to have you know, when it's too hot, it's really hard for certain people to survive, especially people at risk, like small children and the elderly and the sick, right? Also, sometimes when it's really hot, it's obviously really uncomfortable. It's harder to work. It's harder to go to school. Everything is harder when it's extremely hot. Some of the temperatures reach 38 degrees. I've heard about a 42-degree measurement at Repulse Bay one day in June. I mean, these are crazy numbers. These are numbers that you would usually only see in countries like India. And now we are seeing these types of temperatures in Europe, across Asia, in the US, in South America, and we're just so hot. And, you know, it's just going to be terrible. The other damage from heat is that the hotter it is, the harder it is to grow food. So a lot of crops will not have as much land available for them to be able to grow. So farmers will have a much more limited number of crops they can grow, and we might have to give up some of our favorite foods. Foods that are at risk include bananas, coffee, chocolate, potatoes. These are all foods that you may either not be able to consume or have to pay a lot more money for because they will be scarce. It will be difficult to grow them. Going plant-based reduces your food-related emissions by 30%. Nothing else you can do has the same effect as an individual consumer. Here's an idea of what growing livestock does to our planet. I'd like to especially show you the number on the right, total land. We currently use 45% of the land on Earth to grow cattle. That's insane. And as I've just told you, we're going to have even less land available on Earth because of climate change. So we urgently need to start diverting land from growing meat to growing plants. Here are some numbers on the difference in greenhouse gas kilos per serve for meat, dairy, seafood versus, for example, soy. As you can see, nuts, peas, beans, and tofu are negligible compared to, of course, the worst culprit, which is beef. Lamb is the second, but the thing is that while lamb is very, very bad in terms of greenhouse gases, the volume of lamb consumed on Earth is quite low, whereas the volume of beef consumed is very high. If you have to pick a meat, you can see that chicken is the best. Pork is above that, but you can see that farmed seafood is actually pretty bad, which always surprises people. I'm going to skip the mainland China and I'm going to show you Hong Kong. So I like to give you stats that are very personal to where you live. Did you know that people in Hong Kong consume 3 times more meat and dairy than anywhere in the world? Did you know that we're the 7th highest greenhouse gas emitter per capita in the world? The 7th, our little city. And then finally, 62% of our emissions are due to the consumption of meat and dairy products. This is from an HKU study recently. Growing animals causes epidemics. In fact, a lot of COVID outbreaks have been happening all over the world at meat slaughterhouses and abattoirs because the conditions that we grow meat in are so bad for the human workers, but also for the animals. And they are a hotbed of disease transmission. It's bad for greenhouse gas emissions. It's bad for deforestation because we get rid of trees. We are killing the Amazon in Brazil and across South America in order to grow more beef. We are causing the mass extinction of literally hundreds of thousands of species, both plant species and animal species. We're losing species we've never even been able to study, so we don't even know how much we're losing. There's obviously the water shortage aspect. Some of you may be aware that water is going to be a very scarce resource in 10, 15 years. And we've got to stop using so much water to produce meat that we don't need. And then finally, as I've talked about, food insecurity. The other thing I like to show people, this is the favorite slide that I show in schools when I talk to schools about this. Most of us have this wrong idea that you can only get protein from meat. That's just not true. Actually, the meat that cows get their protein from plants. They eat grass and weeds and herbs, and we then eat the cow so that we can get the protein. Well, newsflash, you can get the protein directly from meat. There's also the health aspect. We are now finding out that there's a lot of negative health aspects to eating so much meat. Now, the thing is that we humans were actually evolved to be omnivores. You probably learned that word in school. But if you look at our diet today, the average diet is like a carnivore diet. It's mostly meat and then a little bit of plants. But really, we need to get to mostly plants and a little bit of meat and seafood and dairy. One of my favorite movements that was ever created is Green Monday. We're very proud and lucky that Green Monday started right here in Hong Kong, and it is now a movement that is in 120 countries. And it's very simple. The idea is just that you pledge that on Mondays, you're gonna eat green. That's it. And what's really interesting is that you save so many emissions just by giving up meat 1 day a week. And I think this goes back to the quote that I showed you at the beginning, which is that you can make a difference. It's quite a lot of, if everyone in Hong Kong were to go Green Monday, that would be 1.5 million tons of carbon emissions saved. That's crazy. I mean, that's such a huge difference. So no one is saying you never have to eat meat again. We're saying, can you reduce? This is the ideal diet. And as you can see, it is mostly plants, and then a little bit here of dairy and animal. The rest is plant source protein, unsaturated plant oils, whole grains, fruits and vegetables, and a little bit of added sugar. The other thing I want to talk about, and this is what we showcase a lot in Green Queen, there's a huge food revolution happening. There are all these entrepreneurs that decided that they needed to figure out how to get people to eat less meat. And the problem is that meat is a huge part of our culture. It's part of our traditions, our identity, our food. You know, if you're a Hong Konger, you know, char siu is like one of our main staples. So how do we get people to do something good for the planet and their health, but also still not deprive them? Because food is one of the greatest things in the world. Like enjoying food with your family and friends and loved ones is a very special thing, and food is delicious. It's a pleasurable act. And so we need to make a way for people to continue to enjoy, but without animals. And so there's a bunch of really interesting entrepreneurs here in Asia and across the world that believe that you don't need animals to make meat. And that's quite a revolutionary idea, because for most people, meat equals animals. But for these entrepreneurs, and one of them is obviously the founder of Impossible Foods, and the other one that you might have heard of is Beyond Meat. And then you might have heard of Omni Pork, which is also from Hong Kong. Omni Pork was created by the same people who run Green Monday, and it's a replacement for pork mince meat. And they all really believe that you can get the same result from plants than you can from animals. So if you look at the picture I'm showing you, this is a very famous picture. It's the Impossible Whopper served at Burger King in the US. So Burger King actually tasted the Impossible Foods patty, and they were so impressed. They couldn't believe it. And they put it on their menu, and it's one of the most popular things on their menu. And it is a hamburger that looks exactly like a meat hamburger, but it is entirely made from plants. And that is a revolution that I found out about these products about 5 years ago. When I visit a lot of food shows to find out what's going on in the world, the new products, the innovation, and I saw these products, and I realized finally there was going to be an answer that was going to really make a difference, and that Green Queen really needed to get ahead of this and start sharing this in Asia and showing people just how exciting it could be to be plant-based. Actually, in Hong Kong, we're so lucky because all of these companies are here, and we can get them at literally hundreds of locations. So it's really easy. They're available at all kinds of budgets and in all kinds of cuisines, from Asian to Western, and we can eat delicious food with our friends and loved ones while not harming animals and while lowering our carbon emissions. So what can you do? When it comes to food, there's so many things you can do. Some of them are on the screen right now, but most importantly, I really invite you to figure out something that resonates with you, either from what I said today or in general from any of the incredibly inspiring speakers that I saw on the program. Some of them I know personally, and figure out, you know, what is the message that means something to you, and what can you do to be that person that makes a difference. In my case, it's food. I grew up in a house full of food. My mom is an incredible cook. My grandmother from India is really famous. Well, unfortunately, she passed away, but even today, I will go and meet people and they will say, oh, your Auntie Raj's food was the best in the whole of Delhi. You know, I come from a family where food is our identity. It's our way of sharing our love. You know, my mom, she always had, every day I ate different types of food. She's really, you know, innovative, and she's really, really into it. And so for me, food became something that I had to change because of my health. And I realized that there was a way to really continue to support excellent, delicious, great food that brings people together, but do it in a way that doesn't harm the planet or animals or the environment. And that meant a lot to me. And so that's what we try and do at Green Queen, and just what I try and do with my life. I try and always show people food that's delicious. And then once they're enjoying it, I might say, oh, well, actually, that was totally plant-based. And of course, we have so many resources on Green Queen if you want to discover some of these amazing products and chefs and restaurants. But I urge you to really choose a topic that means something to you, whether it's food or fashion or energy or, I don't know, anything in the world that makes you passionate, and you can find a way to really connect with people about it and do something that resonates positively for humanity. Just a little more about Green Queen in case you don't know us. I do encourage you to check out greenqueen.com.hk if you have time. And you can always reach out to me at getintouch@greenqueen.com.hk about anything, and I will more than happily help out and share with you. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now and check the questions in case there are some. Isn't animal protein necessary for some aspects of development in children? I do not believe that to be true. That is not true. There is no proof of that. And there's plenty of research that suggests that plant-based children are really, really healthy and have have really positive kind of health markers. So, another question is, the Burger King patty is full veg? Yes, 100%. The Impossible patty, which you can get at many restaurants all across Hong Kong, is completely plant-based. If you want to find out what's inside it, we have lots of information on Green Queen, or you can go to their site, impossiblefoods.com. Nice comment from Sakshi. Not true, I'm super healthy and never ate meat my entire life. Exactly. There are plenty of people that have grown up vegetarian or sometimes vegan, and they've never eaten meat, and they're plenty healthy. In fact, most people become healthier when they quit meat, because the meat that most of us are eating is pretty gross. I won't really go into it too much right now, but I can. Another comment, I love this idea of Green Mondays. I'll be taking part in that. Do you offer anything in person for the Hong Kong community to be more proactive? So Green Mondays is not my movement, but actually there's a lot you can do to get involved with Green Monday if that's something that really resonates with you. And they have a website, greenmonday.org, and I really recommend you check it out. They have loads of programs with schools. The best thing you can do if you really want to encourage people around you and the idea resonates with you is use your social channels. And if you like to cook or invite people or go out to eat, try and kind of invite people to places that serve plant-based food or delicious vegetarian options, and maybe show them through delighting them. I like to say that, like, delight people with delicious food and you will change their minds, because people we're emotional about food, and we need to kind of experience delicious food. And you know, I've done that so much. I've either cooked for people or taken them to eat an Impossible Burger, and I've done presentations where we've given people beef and Impossible Burgers right next to each other, and most people actually thought the Impossible Burger was beef. So I mean, I've seen that happen so many times. Another question, is there any way you can survive without ever eating meat? 100%. Literally millions of people do every day, and they're very happy, and they actually feel great because they're not taking any lives. Saffron Law, wouldn't it be more expensive to create plant-based meats? Yes, right now, because we are right in the beginning of this food revolution, there's a lot of research and development dollars that are spent in order to create plant-based meats that taste exactly like meat, and in order to convince many people very fast. However, I like to remind everyone that we live in Hong Kong. In every wet market, you can buy between 10 and 20 different tofu products for less than $10 that are absolutely delicious and provide all the plant protein you need. So the idea that it is expensive to be vegan is just not true. Absolutely not true. aren't artificial meats unhealthy due to the higher level of saturated fats in them? I'm not sure which one you're talking about, but actually on most nutritional markers, the plant-based meats that I'm talking about, the new generation, are actually healthier. They have less cholesterol. Fat is pretty much the same, but they use fats like coconut oil, things like that, or olive oil. And the only thing is, obviously, they do have sodium in them, but most people, when they cook meat, add a lot of sodium containing sauces or seasonings. So it's pretty much on par. I will also say that I am not saying that you should eat an Impossible Burger at every meal, but I also don't think you should eat a burger at every meal. I think you should eat salads and soups and drink smoothies and have fruit and have all kinds of different things. The best diet is a balanced, varied diet. So let me just be clear that nobody is saying that these products should be eaten at every meal, but the reality is that so many people in the world go and eat fast food multiple times a day. So for me, if somebody's going to go to McDonald's anyway or Burger King anyway, I would much rather they're eating an Impossible Patty or a Beyond Patty, because then it's better for their health and it's better for the planet. Let me just be clear. Industrial meat is not good for you. And 98% of meat that is produced industrially. It is packed full of hormones. It is packed full of antibiotics. It is fed corn and soy, which is an artificial diet. Cows should be eating grass, and therefore it develops a high level of omega-6 and omega-9 fatty acids, which cause inflammation in our bodies in large quantities. So it is not healthy for you. I mean, we can have a huge discussion about that, but I just want to be clear. The healthiest diet is mostly whole food plant-based with sometimes pre-prepared foods.